Voters have spoken. This week saw the election of a new justice to the state Supreme Court after what became the most expensive state judicial race in U.S. history. To break down the race and look ahead to potential lawsuits, here's Emily Fannin and J.R. Ross.
This week we have a full breakdown of the election results, and we begin, of course, with the big race that was nationalized here in Wisconsin, which was the state Supreme Court race. And Susan Crawford's victory now means that liberals will maintain their majority on the bench at least for the next 3 years. Now, there's many factors that went into her 10-point lead over her conservative opponent, Brad Schimmel. First, there was the Elon Musk factor. Many Republicans that I talked to say a lot of voters were turned off by those big checks and his involvement in the race. On the other hand, they don't think Schimmel would have performed or could have performed worse without his financial help. Then you got to the messaging, right? This is a judicial race. People in polling say they want candidates to talk about the issues. A lot of people say Schimmel didn't talk about abortion and some of the key issues that Crawford had to her advantage. And also is just a much different political environment. Yes, we are a purple state. This is one that Donald Trump won last fall, but this is a judicial race, and Democrats just appear to consistently have an edge in spring elections over conservatives.
Look, I know the national kind of view has been this is a referendum on Trump and Elon Musk, and I get why. Elon Musk inserted himself in a way that I've never seen another individual do in a Supreme Court race in Wisconsin. And two, it's the first few months of Trump's second administration. There's stuff going on that's irritated the Democratic base. But you got to take this bigger picture view of in Wisconsin, in a typical April election anymore, you start with about a +5 advantage for the Democrat or the liberal candidate. Then if you add the fuel to that fire of Elon Musk giving out million-dollar checks, or Donald Trump and his tariffs, or go back to 2023, the abortion issue, or go back to 2020 in a primary for president, Democratic side, not on the Republican side. You then exacerbate that advantage Democrats have and lead to a double-digit win. So it's not just about Trump and Musk. They definitely had a factor there. But give Susan Crawford credit. She raised money in an amazing way. Look, 2 years ago, the candidate for Republicans, Dan Kelly, did not take money from the state GOP. Brad Schimmel did, what, $9.5 million. Crawford took about $11.4 million from Democrats, so, advantages are still. But she raised so much from individuals. She made a national donor list, unlike I've ever seen before, from a candidate for Supreme Court, and use that money to have an advantage on the airwaves in the closing weeks.
And talking about the airwaves, too, what many conservatives tell me is that she was able to define Schimmel very early on in the race because she had that advantage. She was up on the air in December, January. Then Elon Musk didn't really get involved until late January to give Schimmel that financial edge to help him. Also, I think now there's possible, political headwinds for the Republican Party here in Wisconsin, as many are pointing fingers of what is going on. I mean, they have now lost the last 16 out of 19 statewide elections. Some people are pointing blame at the chairman, Brian Schimming, of the state Republican Party here. But, I mean, who else wants that job, right? It's not an easy task ahead, but it is going to make May's convention, when they have their state convention here in Wisconsin, much more interesting about his future.
Look, the funny thing is, like 5 months ago, Brian Schimming and the whole coalition was lauded for its ground game, right? It delivered Wisconsin for Donald Trump. I always caution people to read too much about the ground game, all right? The ground game is good to help you in a close ball game, but if you are at a disadvantage, so all right. In this one, Schimmel's on the trajectory to lose anyway. I mean, early on, because of that natural electorate. So if you're in a tie ball game, if you're in a tie game, last quarter driving the field, your ground game can kick the field goal to win. But if you're down 7 points, that's not going to overcome the money, the motivation, the electorate you had. Democrats are just more organized. They're coalition of groups that do stuff, do a better job of coordinating versus what Republicans do, and they have that natural advantage that they use to their advantage to win in this race.
All right, let's briefly just touch on the other statewide race, which was for the Department of Public Instruction. The incumbent, Jill Underly, beat her opponent, Brittany Kinzer. Obviously, it wasn't the same vote threshold compared to the state Supreme Court contest, but ultimately Underly will now be serving in that role for the next 4 years.
It seemed like they tried to kind of keep her out of the public view a lot to avoid it being a referendum on her. And basically, she hitched her wagon to Susan Crawford. If Crawford was going to win, that was going to help pull her across the finish line. Crawford wins by 10 points. She wins by around 6. Now, if Crawford won by 3, may have been a bad idea, but it did work out for her in the end.
All right, and we want to now look ahead to, of course, the many issues that are likely going to come before the court. Yes, there's already an abortion case pending, but there's another one brought forth by Planned Parenthood that we could see the court accept in the coming days, the coming months, which challenges a constitutional right, whether there is one, to an abortion. Meanwhile, the issue of Act 10, collective bargaining rights, could likely come before the court. Also, which was a big theme on the campaign trail, another future challenge, possible challenge, I should say, to congressional maps. But JR, there's a lot of kind of warning signs that would be very difficult to bring forth this type of challenge to the court.
I know a lot of people have said this is going to happen for sure if Crawford were to win, but in talking to lawyers, they brought up a number of points that make that maybe not so likely. Remember, there's already a challenge, the map filed by Democrats, the court turned down unanimously. So you had to get 3 members of that court are sitting there right now, plus Crawford at least, to say, no, we want to take a challenge now. 2, what's your argument going to be? Is it going to be a partisan gerrymander? Well, 1, that's not against the Constitution that I can find right now. I'm not a lawyer. They'll find a way to make that argument. But 2, this map isn't really a partisan gerrymander. It's an Incumbent Protection Act. This is kind of a history lesson, but this map is based off of what happened in 2011. Republicans had control of both House legislature and the governor's office. They drew the maps for legislature, but the congressional delegation, senior aides of that delegation, drew this map. It wasn't, again, a partisan gerrymander. It was an Incumbent Protection Act. How do you make the case that that is illegal? Tough to do, and then there's timing. You know, you'd have to act with extreme speed to have a new map in place by 2026. So my bet from talking to people is the maps we had in place in 24 will be there next fall.
All right, that will do it for this week. Thanks so much for joining us.